Oh, looks like it skipped the countdown. We're recording already. Okay. Hello and welcome everyone to a special video interview / podcast episode, whatever you want to call it these days. My name's Tommy Flanagan. I'm the editor of Faultline. Firstly, I need to apologise because I'm very bunged up with yet another cold. So I'm sounding even more nasally than usual, but I hope you can grin and bear it because I'm certain this session will be worth your while. Now, I've been looking forward to this one because I believe this is our first ever Aussie guest. I'm joined by Lucas Bertrand, founder and CEO at Insights, which is essentially an analytics company that has come up with a kind of unorthodox way of measuring media placement value on the screen, which we'll dive into a lot more detail as we get on. So, g'day, Lucas. How you going, mate?
G'day, Tommy. You're sounding more Aussie with your bunged up nasally thing.
Oh, is it helping? That's good to
Make
know.
sure you finish every question with every
course,
sentence with a question.
Yeah. And speaking of which, my first question for you actually is, why have you still not accepted my LinkedIn request? Was it something I said in a previous article?
Really?
Yeah, you've left me hanging, man.
I know. God, I'll be all over that Basaro.
The Safo. Just had to clear that up.
Thank you.
It's been
Thank
bugging me.
you.
So good.
Yeah,
All right.
I should get on there more.
I'm glad it's nothing personal. So obviously, you know, I'm doing what I do. I'm very fascinated by the technologies that underpin the video industry, as I'm sure you are, as well as, you know, the business and monetization strategies that drive it. But I'm also kind of naturally curious about the people behind the company logos. And that's kind of the point of these interviews and the podcasts and that kind of thing, the kind of stuff that we don't write about on the nitty gritty, detailed, analytical stuff on the pages of Faultline week in, week out. So before we kind of get into the meat of it and what you guys do, I understand, Lucas, that you started out slinging t-shirts and coffee.
Yeah.
So without giving us, you know, the full life story, can you kind of enlighten us, for any budding and entrepreneurs listening to this out there, how you made the jump from grinding beans to optimizing media?
Yeah. Well, it's a good one. I was actually chasing a girl, and as you do, and luckily we're married and we have 2 kids, so it was a good chase, a good catch, and she's a great catch, Rachel. So I sold the coffee business in Australia and moved over to set it up in the UK. And then I realised I didn't know anyone. You need to know plumbers and electricians and chippies and all of the tradespeople. So I got a job on a building site to try and meet these folks. And kind of one thing led to another. Ended up helping a mate run a technology business. So I came at it from the technology side. I actually, the nightmare of that tech business was we were making stuff in China and boxing it up and branding it and selling it to Dixon's and Maplin's and the big retailers. And I'd have all these wrong power supplies. I'd get the European power supply instead of the UK one. And as the MD, I'd spend the weekend changing power supplies in the warehouse of Maplin up north, right? And I thought this digital media thing could be interesting because we can deliver an asset and the marginal cost is next to zero and there's no power supplies. And so I thought, wow, this mobile content thing, this is back in 2004, this could be a really interesting angle. And then I went to Cannes a few times down at MIPCOM, and I just loved the people. You know, it was just, these are my people, right? Retail, I mean, they're pretty bloody boring, you know. But these media folks, you know, there was a bit of glamour and there was all this kind of stuff going on. I thought, these are cool people. So I was like, right, we just got to figure out a business now. But yeah, we started Mo Media, and Mo Media was a mobile content company making original productions. Short form, you know, 2G. This is probably before most people are born, and we then sold part of that company to Endemol, and we then started aggregating content from about 80 different production companies and distributors, including the studios. And the insight that I got for Lupa was that All of them, when we were delivering these assets to transactional platforms like iTunes, Google, Amazon, we were saying, can you see all your product? And they're like, well, quietly, not really. And I'm like, but this is your whole business, right? You're doing $1 billion a year in revenue and you can't see where your stuff is. That's insane. And then I'd go around all the studios and I asked the same question, and it was like, we can't. And I was like, right, we got to build a tech company. We've got to build a tech solution that can address that at scale with bots, not with humans. And so that was really the inspiration for it. Sold Mo Media, a few years later, plowed everything into Looper, went all in. Luckily, I was an early investor also in Bitcoin. So that helped fund it in the early days as well before we went out and raised venture.
Wow, I didn't expect it to start off with a love story. What a way to butter me up and soften me up before we get into it. No, that's a really cool, interesting story. Thank you. I think that's a great way to start the session. So thank you. Now, getting into kind of what Looper does. So correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe you started out using the share of voice metric to measure brand visibility, right? And then you quickly ascertained that didn't quite tell the whole story, particularly on connected TVs, which led to the creation quite recently of the dollar MPV, media placement value metric.
Yep.
For instance, so things that we've been writing about, you will collate the top 10 streamers of the month by app and by individual title. Those are the kind of reports that you put out and that we've been looking at. And then you place a dollar value on that. And then that translates media exposure into an estimated monetary value. So can you kind of explain to us in layman's terms, or in as much detail as you want really, for listeners, how this metric actually translates exposure into a dollar value? Because I know some people are still a bit confused by this, and of course there are skeptics out there, us included. I guess that's kind of how we kind of first crossed paths really with Looper, because we saw this and we were a bit skeptical about it.
Yep. Which is good. That's why we engaged with you, Tommy, because it's really important to be rigorous about these things and to know what you know and to know what you don't know. And I think that's our approach is. So we've really built this with our clients, right? So one of our biggest clients, Prime Video, said to us, and they were in the early days, they were like the biggest driver of our rollout, and they've been a fantastic partner for us over the years. So working with them, they were like, look, firstly, we just want visibility. Like, where's our stuff? So the way to think about it is, in a retail store, you've got all your product on the shelf. And you would pay a company, if you're Unilever or Procter and Gamble, you've got lots of brands, lots of SKUs on the shelf. You pay a company to go down the aisles and take pictures of the shelf space and tell you how much shelf space you've got. And that's the equivalent of share of voice, right? How much shelf space have I got versus my competitor? Because it's a zero-sum game, right? It's limited in the amount of spots on the shelf. And that's great. And that's really helpful to know, all right, I got 20%, they've got 10%, I must be doing better. But that didn't really tell the whole story, as you pointed out, because what needed to happen was to know, am I at eye level on the shelf, or am I down the bottom? Now, if I'm down the bottom and I'm selling kids' toys to 3-year-olds, or your 2-year-old and 5-year-old, right? They're scrabbling around on the floor. That's eye level for them. That's great positioning. But if I'm selling, I don't know, hair shampoo for mum, and it's not at her eye level, then that's not optimal. So we then, working with Prime Video and our other customers, we then said, okay, well, let's come up with a weighting. And the idea is that if I get that big top feature rotator on the homepage, that's going to be worth more than if it is that same position 2 pages down. The way to think about it is like, Google search, right? You go, you see a true above the fold on a Google search. Do you scroll down? Yeah, sometimes. Do you go to the second page? Almost never. The third page, no one goes there. Like, that's in the boondocks. So that position at the top of the screen, page 1 versus page 2 versus page 3, is definitely has different value. And it's logical, right? It's like how many eyeballs are going to see the homepage versus further down the menu. So we then did some studies and we were looking at, okay, well, how can we weight this? The original weighting that we built, we had a professor out of the UK, a mathematician that we worked with, and he helped us look at how can we structure this in a way that's consistent across devices and takes into account doesn't take into account the UI, right, which is slightly counterintuitive. What we're wanting to do is take into account the amount of eyeballs that could actually see that page. Of the total audience of a Samsung 2022 model versus an LG 2022 model, they've got 50 million people seeing that, they've got 50 million people seeing that, then the score should be the same. So that was really the first iteration.
Mm-hmm.
The second iteration was clients wanted to know, like, the score we gave was a score from 1 to 24. It's like an arbitrary number. What does that mean? Is it any good or not? I don't know. So it was like, what does good look like? And also, can we put it into their language, which is dollars and cents? And they know that when they buy a placement on Fire TV, that top feature rotator, they might pay $100,000 a day for that placement. So if I got that either as paid or earned, it should be the same value. So we then looked at rate cards and we looked at the CPMs in the market, and we actually did our own first party research, going around to all of the ad shops who media buyers, and we averaged their CPMs that they were paying, either for programmatic or for direct sales. So the programmatic are much lower. It's like $1. It's $10 or $20 for your direct sales, and it comes out an average of 10, just as a simple example. So we could then look at, okay, we've got the CPM. What's the value of the local market? How many devices are in the market? So we work with people like GWI, with Omdia, with a bunch of other research companies to look at how many actual physical devices are in the market. And then we also did some first party research around engagement. How many times does that device get turned on? So a Roku device, because we've got half a dozen of them at home, gets turned on less frequently than your main Samsung TV with the whole sound system at home. So it has a higher engagement, the Samsung TV, compared to the Roku device in this example. And therefore, what we look at is the CPM times the number of devices times the engagement, and that gives us this dollar MPV. And this.
Okay, got it. Cool. But I just wanted to pull you up on something you mentioned right at the beginning of that, because you mentioned that Amazon was involved in driving the metric and refining the metric over time. And from what I've seen, Prime Video consistently ranks pretty strongly in your gradings. So how then do you respond to criticism that your clients, especially Amazon, are kind of influencing these results, especially when they were involved in defining it and refining it?
Well, when I say they're involved in defining it, they were, and the refinement was, these are generic numbers, right? So you look at a top feature rotator gets a score of 24 across any device. Our solution goes through the device and captures all of the placements, and then allocates that placement to an owner. So we'll go, in the case of Amazon, if we see Reacher, we know that belongs to Amazon. If I see Super Bowl, we know that belonged to Peacock on this day, right? So that's how it gets allocated. The scoring that sits behind it is the same for both of them, right? They get the same value because it's about that position on the screen. So if Prime Video is outperforming someone, it's because they're getting more of those big positions on the home pages, right? Because a score of 24 for your top feature rotator on the home page, if you scroll down like 2 pages, that same position might get a score of 4. And another page down, it might get a score of 1, right? It really drops off dramatically. So it's all about how many of your titles are you getting in the most prominent positions
Hmm.
times the MPV, and then that will give you your score.
Okay, and as kind of segue from that question, is that I noticed that when you pivoted from the to the dollar MPV metric, YouTube and Netflix, they kind of slipped out of the rankings, and we wrote a story about that a while back, and you explained at the time that this is because they generate a lower dollar MPV from the store placements, even though their overall market, presence and their audiences are obviously massive.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
does that then create, challenges in communicating to clients and the broader audience about what people are actually watching? Does it create this kind of false fantasy when you ignore Netflix and YouTube? Not ignore Netflix and YouTube, but they not measure
Yeah.
them in
Look,
a way
look,
where.
it's a, yeah, look, it's a really good point. I think the thing to understand is the historical context of Netflix and YouTube on
Mm,
connected TV devices. So
mhm,
when the first devices went out, I mean, BBC, frankly, led the charge with iPlayer,
mm,
so another great British,
mm,
innovation. Um, the first ones onto the screens were YouTube and Netflix, and back then the industry, I think, slightly screwed it up, right? So the CTV manufacturers are like, "Please Netflix, please YouTube, will you build an app for my device and my operating system?" And they were paying them. Nowadays, if you want to go onto a connected TV device, you pay, right, as the app, as the distributor. But Netflix and YouTube did a brilliant job of, one, rolling out before everyone else and owning that real estate. You've got the remote control positioning, you've got the top left app positioning, and they don't do paid placements. They're like, we don't need to, right? We own that market. So for them, it's been a brilliant piece. However, as the market matured, the OEMs and the CTV manufacturers are like, we've got this really valuable real estate. We are now the window. The EPG is kind of now buried. And now we've got these really visual UIs, and this is advertising space. We should be selling this. So they started hawking that to the newer players, and the newer players are all paying big money to get placements. I think the last number I saw out of the 7 billion that the global streamers were spending on promotion, 700 million of it went to CTV. Now, I think that's low. I think it should be a lot higher. And part of the problem is that there's not a common metric that they can all use and agree on when it comes to the value.
yeah.
So that's driven a lot of the media placement value adoption in the industry that we've seen so far. And we expect that to continue.
Okay, yeah, that's something I was going to touch on actually, because every time I have a conversation with someone, about audience measurement and content analytics, whatever it may be, there's a huge headache, mainly because there's no standardized way of measuring anything. There are different currencies for everything, and there's a lot of frustration, particularly with Nielsen's lack of visibility. So something I was wondering is whether Looper could benefit from incorporating metrics, third-party metrics like watch time and engagement to complement what you already do, or is that something you've
Yeah.
already tried, or is that a different ballpark?
Uh, I think it could definitely benefit. I mean, these are complementary, right?
Yeah.
Because what we've got in the industry at the moment is there's a lot of opaqueness.
Mm,
And what we're trying to do is shine a light so there's more transparency. Because if everyone knows that the value of that spot is $100,000, what am I buying? I'm actually buying impressions. So what do we mean by that? Well, in a market with a $10 CPM, it's 10 million impressions. Okay, great. So I'm buying 10 million impressions or I'm earning 10 million impressions. Both of those should be the same. And then as a streamer, I should be able to link that to my performance data to see, well, did we actually get that performance? And if I got more than 10 million, let's keep doing that. That's great. That's a great deal.
mm,
And if I got less, maybe I need to tweak something. Maybe I need to change the call to action or the title that I'm promoting. So these metrics, working with those who have got, like you'll have the MMPs. So these companies that put an SDK into an asset when you do a paid campaign, and they get like event level data. It's all anonymized and the like, but it's really granular, a lot more granular than what we can provide. Combining those data sets for a streamer is really valuable. Now, the big streamers have this model called an MMM model. I think it's a multimedia model, or it's probably something simple like that. But and what they do is they take their performance data, they combine it with our data, they combine it with Nielsen data, with their MMP data, all these different data sets, and they actually control what is driving, what is providing the right signals for performance. So rather than us integrating all of those third parties, what I see going forward is that the streamers have a data lake and they ingest all these different metrics, and then their data science teams use that to inform their partner marketing. We should go spend more money with LG or Samsung because we're getting better performance.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. But I'm curious about the kind of the monitoring tools themselves that you use, your kind of underlying methodology, and what's the secret sauce, and whether actually that is kind of something that's patentable. I say that because I really, in my line of work I hate using the word unique, but why is no one doing something similar? Why is someone not done
We,
something similar like a Nielsen?
yeah. Look, it's a really good question. I think to start with, we flew under the radar,
Mm-hmm.
and then we signed up nearly everyone. So
Yeah.
most of the global streamers, most of now big broadcasters, uh, they've signed long-term deals, 4 or 5 year deals with us. So if you're to set up a competing service, it's pretty slim pickings. So I think that's probably one key thing. We also do have a patent.
Okay.
So we've got a hardware software solution. So we have two data centers out near Heathrow,
Oh,
far enough
okay.
apart that if one blows up, the other one still runs. And in there is a server racks full of devices. So we actually have the physical hardware connected to our device. And then we are able to automate going through and collecting the data off each of those devices. So we also have 33 labs around the world. And these labs sounds a little glorified calling them labs, I think. But the reality is we have all the local MVPDs. So, we've got an office in Paris and we'll have, the Free TV and Bouygues and, all the local ones, multiple versions of them. And that's in across 25 countries. So 250 platforms, 25 countries, plus these 33 labs and the two data centers. It's a ton of money. It's a ton of effort. And there's not much reward at the end of it if you wanted to build a competitor. So I think that's really how it's come
Okay.
about.
Okay, so there's a bit more of an overlap with kind of the test automation vendors than I kind of initially expected. So you're kind of almost in slight competition with them as well as the analytics companies. So I didn't realize there was that kind of
We
overlap.
we could be. I mean, we've
Yeah.
looked at that market many
Mm,
times, but they do a really good job at that. Look, we're not interested in doing kind of one-off testing and things
mm,
like that. What we're trying to build is firstly visibility for the industry. A global streamer spends 20 billion a year and can't see where their stuff is. So that's really, as I mentioned, the reason I got into this was because I was speaking to the studios. They couldn't see where their product was. I'm like, that's insane, right? And I come from a retail background. I was selling widgets to the Dixons and Maplins, and merchandising was really core to what we did. So I come at it from a merchandiser's perspective
mm.
rather than a technical or testing perspective, and that's what the estate's been built for. So yeah, you could probably do some testing. we can do live, right? So we've recently launched live sports tracking,
Hmm.
and that's pretty amazing. We're seeing, errors where the the program isn't being promoted at the right time. So you as the consumer, which is the perspective we always want to take, is what does the consumer see? I go to watch my footy match and it's not there. The promotion to say watch it here on this service at this time isn't right. So those kinds of errors that we pick up, they're hugely expensive for the sports bodies, for the streamer, for the platform themselves, because the audience can't find that. So that's kind of the closest that we'd get to a testing type solution.
Okay, so specifically, which technology is patented? I don't know how much detail you can go into
It,
about that. Is
it's
that hardware or software?
well, actually, it's really hard to patent software. Turns
Mm.
out, just I
Yeah.
learned this through the journey, and it's so therefore it's the hardware software combination, and it's the technical ability to be able to get the information off the
Okay.
device and how that works together. It's slightly above my pay grade, to be honest, in terms of the technical side of it.
Okay, we'll dig into that another day. We could do a whole separate.
I'll bring the VP of engineering on for that.
Yeah, and your patent lawyer as well. Something you said to me previously, Lucas, is that the fragmentation in the TV OS landscape is good for business for Looper Insights. So, firstly, can you explain why it's good for business, and then also say if the tvOS world went down the route of mobile and PCs, consolidated down to 2 or 3 horse race, would that put you out of business, or could you adapt in some way in that
Yeah, really good
theoretical
question.
future?
Yeah. So, firstly, the first part of the question, fragmentation is good for us because it means that there's just lots of different types of user interfaces in the market, and if you're a streamer, you need to track them all.
Mhm.
And so, it literally is a numbers game. I've got, if there's 10 different UIs in a territory, I need to track all 10 of them if they're important to me, and so that helps. If there is that consolidation, and you'd kind of think that would happen over time, that a few players get really powerful, and everyone just falls into line, like with iOS and Android, then I suspect it wouldn't actually affect us too much. And the reason is that the content on your LG is localized to the US, let's say, or to the UK. So that's important, right? You're not going to show the same content in 2 different territories. Um, I mean, at the moment, the different years have different user interfaces in the same territory. That's insane,
Mm.
right? They've got to figure out the backwards compatibility and have, because they're trying to sell their audience to Disney Plus, to Hulu, right? And if you're not bucketing that audience, you're fragmenting yourself as an OEM, right? What's the point of saying I've got, 20 million households, but only 2 of them see the 2022 model, 5 of them see the 2023 model, and you got to buy across that. And when you buy across that, you have to create different artwork, different promotions for each one, right? That's a complete pain in the ass. So, firstly, they some consolidation would be really helpful for the industry because we want to help clients target a particular audience so that they can get them as subscribers or engage with them as viewers to sell more ads. That's the business that we're trying to help with. So I think that consolidation piece could be a really good thing. The fact is, all the different countries that we cover, the different OEMs, they're going to have different content that's being presented.
Mm. And a follow-up question to that is: do you think that will happen? Will we end up with Android TV, Apple TV OS, and Roku, and that's it over the next 10 years, maybe?
Yeah, look, it's a really good question. It's hard to see it right now. I mean, look at Roku, dominating in the US,
Yeah.
in terms of the numbers of households. Yet outside the US, they're really struggling. And they did some good partnerships, the Sky partnership with the Roku, Sky Now box and things like that. But they just haven't really got that global traction. So if the biggest player in the US, you'd think they are able to leverage into other markets and they've been unable to, then that really says something. Then the tech companies, the big tech companies. So, Apple, where's Apple TV? It just doesn't seem to rank nearly as highly as you'd expect from that company, given the fan base, given how many people have got iPhones, how many people are within the ecosystem. It just seems to make a lot of sense that you would buy more Apple stuff, right? But it doesn't seem to be the case on that front. And then look at the TV manufacturers. I mean, TCL buying, well, effectively doing the JV with Sony, taking control, 51%. What happened, Sony? Sony, you were the premium brand, the Bravia brand. Like, I could never afford to buy one, but it was always you walked in the showroom, you're like, you just go check out the Sonys, right? Because they're the coolest brand. But they didn't build their own operating system. They kind of completely missed the boat. So, yeah, it's really hard to see this thing consolidating in the short term anyway.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with that. It's very difficult to see it, and we've published in the past those tvOS Venn diagrams. Thierry Fortier, he's made one of his own that we published in the past in Faultline. They're so complicated. You can see the need for consolidation because they are so complicated, but at the same time, it's hard to see it happening. And of course, in a couple of weeks, it's Connected TV World Summit in London, where I'm sure someone will post an updated version of this tvOS Venn diagram. So
absolutely,
we'll be sure to report back on that.
Yeah, I mean, the only way I could see it happening is if there's another layer added that's independent of the OEMs and the operating system, like another operating system layer. Could that be an AI layer that's added on top?
Yes, indeed. Yeah. The AI OS. It's another story we're tracking.
Yeah, it could be. I've been at NTech this week here in LA, and listening to other vendors and customers about how they're using AI across these solutions is really fascinating. I mean, but we still haven't got the basics right. Discovery still sucks.
Oh yeah.
Big time. It's part of the reason we exist, right? Is because discovery is just so difficult from a consumer's point of view. I mean, I'm in LA at the moment. Trying to find your sports team event. I'm lucky that we live in the UK where there's only 3 or 4 places to go to find that sports event. Here, there's like dozens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, pretty much everyone I know uses,
and not even the same one, right?
Yeah.
Like, at least if I knew that I had to subscribe to Fox One to watch my college team, that I could watch that for the year. No, it's next week. It's somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, pretty much everyone I know uses this very simple website just called Live Football on TV. It's not a piracy site. It just lists who is on TV and where. You just go to the top, English football on TV. It tells you who is playing and what day.
Beautiful.
On what platform, and then even better, you go to teams, and mine being AFC Bournemouth is right at the top. So, and I can see when they're on TV and where. But the point is that this is some cheap third-party website with a terrible interface, but it's there. It's convenient, and yeah, I don't have that on my smart TV downstairs. That's the problem.
Yeah. And why not? That's my question, right? Yeah. Why are those solutions not being built into the operating systems to make it easy for the end user?
Yeah, exactly. We just published a story this week actually about I don't know if you saw this, GeoStar's deal with OpenAI and integrating ChatGPT into the discovery system. So ChatGPT is going to be recommending content. It's very voice focused and conversational, but it's kind of a two-way kind of deal that when a user is interacting with ChatGPT, asking it prompts, what shall I watch tonight? Geo Hotstars recommendations will pop up in that, and it's kind of a bit muddying the waters about whether that is, paid promotion, whether is that this is the
Mm,
start of ChatGPT integrating ads.
mm.
That's a whole different story, but yeah, we dove into that this week, so that's an interesting. But you're right, discovery still sucks. Everyone says it, and
Yeah.
maybe ChatGPT is that the answer. The recommendation engine providers aren't going to like that answer, but
I was having a chat the other night with some mates here, and I was saying, what was the best discovery you ever had in terms of a regular thing that you could rely on?
mm,
And it was the guy at the video store who'd watched every movie,
yeah,
who knew you. You talked to them, right? You were passionate about film. You would talk to them about, they knew your taste. And when you walked in, they're like, Tommy, you got to see this. You're going to love it. I, that was just the best solution ever. And maybe these AIs can help us get towards that. Maybe they're the equivalent of the attendant in the video store helping you because they know you, they know what you like. You're going to love this. That would be great. I suspect
yeah,
we'll still want to walk around the video store as well, because we do like to kind of mooch around and, surf through things and stuff like that. So the visual element for some people, I think, is always going to be there.
yeah,
But I think this could be really complementary.
yeah. Getting as close as you can to kind of replicating that water cooler moment, and especially when you integrate social features, you can see what your friends and family have been watching
Yeah,
and what they've rated it, without having to leave the ecosystem.
yeah.
Yeah, there's some platforms that are incorporating that, but yeah, slowly but surely. So Lucas, you mentioned sports. So what kind of stage are you at in kind of productizing that sports side of the business? And again,
Literally,
is Amazon involved in that? Because you said it was involved from the beginning.
yeah. Well, all of our clients are involved,
Yeah.
and I say all. Most of the big clients now have moved into sport and realized that Murdoch was always right with his Sky strategy of
Yeah.
own those big rights and then people come, and it makes a lot of sense, right? The one-off events I'm less bullish on. I think that unless it's the Super Bowl, but it's kind of a one-off event. But really what we're talking about is those week in, week out events that keep you coming back. Like you're saying, you want to watch Bournemouth. Where's Bournemouth playing on screen? You're going to keep going back there. And so that makes a lot of sense. So that was just like, from our point of view, clients were like, oh, we want to be able to see just at this point in time what's happening on that device. And the reason is they had some sports rights that were really valuable to them, and they really needed a kind of, I want to be able to see that in real time solution. So that's what we built, and we're launching a productized version of it next week. But we've actually been running POCs with most of our big customers, tracking everything from the Super Bowl to Thanksgiving weekend, with looking at NFL, NHL, NBA. We looked at some fights, the Chris Eubank Conor Ben fight. We've done some Premier League in Europe, a whole bunch of different sports. And that's been an incredible eye opener for us. Mainly that it seems that there's a lot of mistakes. We've seen 1.3 mistakes per platform per event here in the US. In Brazil, it's 3. Like, how can you get 3 things wrong for the one event on the one platform
Mm.
on average? I mean, that seems insane to me. And I guess it's because no one's been really looking. And so we're going to help clean up the industry on that front. We're going to help the sports bodies ask for a certain amount of dollar MPV from the streamer, so they can say, I'm going to get a certain amount of promotion for my big one piece of IP.
I was just about to ask, actually, is this something the sports bodies are aware of, or you're trying to raise awareness of this to the
We
sports
are,
bodies?
yeah. So we're going to
Okay.
go to
Yeah.
Sports Pro and Sportel and all the
Yeah.
events. We're
Okay.
speaking through our network. We've got some of our investors are huge in the sports business in terms of acquiring sports rights. Some of them are platforms, and they are really helping us work with those sports bodies to help them, for the first time, audit what's going on a platform and value it.
Hmm.
And so those two things together are going to be really powerful for the industry. And the streamers can also use that. So the streamers can now go to the platform and say, I want a certain value of prominence. I might pay you some money for a bit of it, but I want to get a certain amount of free prominence as well, because this is a big event and it's important to your audience as well. And then the platforms, I've been meeting with some of the platforms here this week, and I was like, are you guys going to hate us for doing this? Like, is this going to become a real pain for you? And they go, no, that would be great, because at the moment, the streamers keep calling me up and saying, can you send me a screenshot of that promotion? And they're like, no. Look, that's a complete pain in the ass for us. So
Mm.
they're like, look, can we use your solution so you can verify that we actually delivered that dollar MPV, that value in prominence?
Hmm.
Um, so it seems like a win-win-win at the moment. Our goal is to get that error rate right down, because error rates are really bad experiences for the end user. An error is a signpost. I watch Bournemouth play Chelsea at this time on this channel. And if it's got the wrong time or the wrong channel, or it doesn't have the right logo, or it says, you know, N- NHL instead of, Premier League, then you've just got the whole thing wrong,
Hmm.
and you're going to miss your audience. And that's terrible. So we're going to help clean that part up. And I'm really excited by that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you're launching that next week, then better get a move on and publish this recording very quickly then, or we're going to be
Yeah.
out of date.
This week.
Yes, exactly. Oh no, it's Friday now. We're working late. So on sports, you just published your legendary February report with NBC Universal, which I've got in front of me, which is assessing the Winter Olympics and the latest Super Bowl together, which of course NBC Universal was showing, concurrently on the same day. So the data shows the Winter Olympics top three placements across CTV homepages generated 30.5 million impressions, while the Super Bowl reached 14.6 million. And the Super Bowl saw a combined daily average value of $146,000 for the top three placements. That's the daily average, compared to the top Winter Olympics top three placements dollar MPV average of $305,900. So broadly, what can content owners take away and learn from those numbers?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very small sample because we're only looking at three devices on
Yeah.
one day. But essentially, what was picked up was that there was like dedicated rail for Olympics, as you'd imagine, because there's so much content. I mean, they've done an amazing job, Universal and Peacock. I don't know if you've seen some of the artwork that's been going out and the promotions that they've been getting, but really, they've done a fantastic job. They've built, like we see in the UK, you've got the Milan Cortina hubs, and so I subscribe to all of the services, but looking at Discovery Plus, they've got this fantastic hub. They are the streamer, the number one streamer in the Olympics in terms of from a
Mm-hmm.
rights perspective, and I can't tell you how much they've improved as well. So all of these UIs where they create these hubs where you as a fan of a particular sport can go in and find that content, that event really easily. I think that's like they've done a great job there. The NFL in comparison is like this, it's as we know, right? It's this one-off event. There's the big lead up to it. Across all the devices, it actually, those numbers will be a fraction of the overall dollar MPV that they will get. And it was huge, right? They did these massive promotions. And I mean, the event itself, right? They got a record audience. It was like 125 million viewers, I believe. Well, I think it was 120 for the game, and it was 125 million for the halftime.
Mm.
for Bad Bunny. Which I mean, that's America, isn't it? Isn't it mind blowing that the actual sports event gets less average viewership than the halftime entertainment? You know, they love
Yeah,
their entertainment.
wait for the World Cup.
Yeah, yeah. Well, hopefully that's going to actually, continue in all the different places on
Hmm.
that Mexican piece. Oh, hope they sort that out.
Yeah, we'll keep politics off the.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
What about the Warner Brothers piece?
yes,
Is
what?
that too political
Well,
to?
what I published the story about the latest Paramount Skydance bid, just yesterday evening, and then first thing this morning, wake up and bang, Netflix is out. Quickly having to update the article, but that's how quickly things happen. You
Were
blink and
you
you miss it.
predicting that?
When the latest bid came in, and Warner Brothers said it was assessing it and whether it's a superior proposal, I thought there's no way Netflix can match that. So yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, pretty much.
yeah.
Now,
Well, that's great. My Netflix stock has gone up. I'm very
yeah,
happy with that. Stay focused, Ted.
yes, indeed,
I mean, you're
indeed.
doing a great job. Just
Yeah, I knew
don't
you'd be happy about it. Yeah. And speaking of reports, another Lupit report I've got in front of me. Running out of time now, but wrapping up. I'm going to put you on the spot because this is your 10 trends reshaping streaming in 2026. So put you on the spot and ask you to pick one of those that you're most bullish on and one that maybe you're a bit more cautious about out of those. That's called the Big Reset. 10 trends reshaping streaming in 2026.
no, the big trends. It's early in the morning here, and it was my birthday last night.
Oh, of course, the excuses are coming in.
Well, I just haven't got it in front of me. Give me some of the top 10.
I did tell you I was going to ask you about this. I
Apologies.
did give you a heads up.
Should be
Okay.
much-
A few moments later.
So, what will be the primary role of fast channels in 2026? 59.2% said a sustainable premium ad-supported business model in its own right. That was the majority answer.
Mm, I think that's fair. I mean, these are interviews that are done, surveys that are done with industry execs. So, generally speaking, I think they've got a pretty good steer of their business.
Hmm.
Um, but look, fast for me is really a US phenomena
Yeah.
because of the structure of the market. And in the UK, there's so much good free content. Like, what is fast? Fast is actually a way for the OEMs to wedge themselves in and create a lot of inventory that they can sell.
Hmm.
That's kind of the business. So the sustainability part in the US, totally get it. Outside the US this year, I don't think so.
Okay. All right. So, one maybe outside of this report, ignore the report, put that to one side. One personal prediction from you for 2026, just broadly in the industry, and then also maybe something not necessarily prediction, but a kind of teaser for Looper Insights specifically, something that you've got in the pipeline that we can keep an eye out for later this year.
Yep. I would say that sports rights will continue to rocket in value for the big ones and become, for more and more streamers, become the key driver for customer acquisition and retention. I think that's going to be a
Yep.
pretty sure thing.
Yeah, I can be on board with that. And a carrot for a Looper carrot you can dangle.
Well, it's going to be around AI and how customers can query our data with however they like to query it and get the insights that really mean a lot to them.
Okay.
So there's an AI layer that's coming. It's launching again in a few weeks' time. The team have been busy, and that's going to really help everyone, yourself included, query our data and get really key insights out of it. So that's a big, exciting project for us.
Okay. Anything that can help me do my job better, I
Yeah.
approve of, but I'll believe it when I see it, Lucas. Oh, speaking of something hot off the press, I almost forgot to mention, I've just seen that you've launched or are planning to launch a new Streamer of the Week short form video series. So yeah, what can we expect from that? Is that a tall order to go from the monthly insights that we've been seeing to the weekly insights? I bet your team are pleased about that.
Yeah, look, I mean, our customers get hourly or daily data.
Okay.
So we only release the aggregated versions to show
Mm-hmm.
monthly. So,
Okay.
you know, that's where clients really want to drill in and
Mm-hmm.
get that granular piece. The short form piece is, I think, really interesting, right? I mean, you know, what we're trying to understand is, you know, what promotions are happening for the total audience time out there, and a whole bunch of it is short form. I was actually introducing Chris McGirt from Cineverse at the NTech, and one of their they've done a JV, micro JV for these mini dramas. That's an $11 billion industry already, and it's rocketing, right? So understanding what is being promoted to whom for short form, I think, is also really valuable.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Thank you, Lucas. I'm going to wrap it up there, but that was a lot of fun.
Wonderful.
Thank you for
Great to
coming
see you,
on.
Tommy.
I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks again. See you
Thanks,
soon.
Tommy.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers.